Hello and welcome to Turning a New Leaf. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. Instead of just looking at my face, I'm happy to be joined by a guest. I'd like to introduce Marla Mosser, who is the founder and principal consultant of MBN Coaching and Consulting. Marla, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Frank. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm really looking forward to exploring some of these incredibly timely topics around leadership today. Organizations are going to have to obviously continue to keep front and center concern about their employees' safety and well-being. They're also going to have to look at the same time, Frank, on how to thrive, because it's imperative that they start now to address that challenge of what the future is going to look like. For many organizations, that future is going to look different from what they had intended. And they are going to be evaluated by both the markets and by their employees based on how well they create a clear and compelling and relevant vision for the future.
I think other challenges we have to talk about pretty seriously, right, are how we're going to deal with the workforce in a different way. We've been forced into remote working. And a lot of companies were already moving strongly in that direction, and this has pushed some that were reluctant to move that way. And I think by and large successfully. Would you agree?
Yes, I think it's been remarkable. As you say, many organizations were already down the path of a transformation that has been taking place from traditional work to sort of this new way of working. And COVID-19 just catapulted everybody into the future sources. I think the next big hurdle when we talk about challenges in this transformation is figuring out how we work, because the ways of working have changed dramatically, and people are missing that sense of connection.
Some employees are going to say, geez, I was very effective working remotely. I'd sure like to be able to do that more often, if not full time. And yet, as you say, a number of employees will be like, no, I really want to get back into the office on a regular basis because it works best for me.
As we talk about sort of the where people are working, we know that it's also imperative that organizations have the right people with the right capabilities in the right place. And along with emerging from COVID-19, there are some businesses whose strategies are going to change significantly.
So assuming we have a workforce that's more distributed in the future and people working remotely, how do we advise leaders, right?
So many challenges. And I think this is the time for extraordinary leaders and extraordinary leadership. So while there are some leaders who sit in that category of being extraordinary leaders on a day-to-day basis, there are many more probably who are ordinary, and this is the time to up the game. I think it's really important to keep in mind the emotional component that is an undercurrent that is happening during this post-COVID-19. For me, a foundational piece is that leaders really need to focus on connectivity as they do this. They need to be connecting with their employees. Yeah. Good leadership practices that you and I know, really, asking the right questions and really listening. Making sure that people feel heard, understood, valued for both who they are as well as what they contribute, and have that foundation of trust.
I really couldn't agree more. And you said the magic word for me, right? Trust. I see this as a key skill and a key element of a relationship, because that's what trust is, right? Trust is an emotional response. Trust is about the relationships that you have with people, and whether or not they see you behave in ways that support what you say. And that's going to become increasingly important, both directions. It's also going to be increasingly important that leaders trust the people that work for them. we also need to show our trust in them, that they're acting in the best interest of the company as well as themselves.
This model can't work it can't work successfully without that level of trust, Frank. Without that human connection, without that trust, leadership is pretty hollow. And I think then relies alternatively on a command and control style that hopefully everyone agrees is pretty passé. Leaders need to be active and intentional about taking what we just talked about, that connection and that opportunity for people to trust one another and really build that culture of trust. They need to pay attention to that and actively seek ways for employees to make those connections. So I know you have strong views about accountability.
I do. I've often said that accountability, I don't believe that accountability is something that you can give to someone. I just simply don't believe it. Accountability is something that someone decides they're going to take. And you can hold them accountable, but you can't make them accountable. If you have some interdependence of members of your team, which you almost certainly do, then hopefully they'll start to hold one another accountable for what they've agreed to do.
We talked a moment ago about sort of the emotional element of this, and I think not to overstate it, Frank, but I think many people have consciously or unconsciously faced their own mortality as they have gone through this experience. And arguably many people have re-examined their priorities.
There's another element to it that I think is also important, and that's the fact that, this is a shared trauma, right? We're all in the same storm, but we're very much not all in the same boat. And I think that's pretty important for us all to recognize, right? Is that we're all going to come out of this with a shared sense of experience, but quite probably a very different set of perceptions. Or we might want to believe that everybody feels the same way about what's happening as we do, but they don't.
Of course, yeah, no, it's a point so well made. Of course they can't, and there will be a complexity to looking at and understanding people's various experiences, and it's so important that we don't think that our lens is the only lens to look through. So, yeah, absolutely.